morning. Today we are going to learn a little bit about kawaii and kawaii art, and we're going to be learning how to use our grid and our grid assist. This is actually the viewfinder in order to make a perfect replica of a drawing. So you'll need to have your sketchbook, your grid assist, your viewfinder, your pens, a pencil, a B or an HB, an eraser, maybe some tape, and here we go. So to start with, I have to tell you a little bit about kawaii art. Kawaii in Japanese means cute, and the original icon for kawaii art is Hello Kitty, and you can see that because of the eyes, the nose, there's no mouth on Hello Kitty. This is from one of the very first iconic images of kawaii art. Artists have been adapting that style, and you can see all kinds of stickers and other kinds of art with these little eyes, little noses, little mouths, and they're on foods and all kinds of crazy things. So whenever it is Japanese inspired kawaii art, this kind of cute element is always in play. In your kits, you have this Kawaii Faces, and you can see that there's lots of different variations. Some faces look super happy or kind of confused or kind of sad or mean, but they all have the similar distance between the eyes and the mouth, and then these little rosy cheeks is kind of iconic and typical. So we are going to be creating some kawaii faces, but we are going to be doing it in order to learn how to do the grid technique, because sometimes you want to make something, your drawing, just exactly like the original. And the grid technique is one way that artists make their drawings exactly like the original, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The grid is all about proportions and making sure that the height and width of your shapes is exactly like the original. So we're going to be doing a very simple kawaii glass of milk, kawaii style. And we're going to be using our grid assist and the viewfinder in order to make it exactly like the original. Now this is pretty easy, and you might say, well, Miss Thomas, I do not need to make a whole grid in order to make that drawing. Like, I can totally do that. But once we learn the technique of using the grid, then we're going to be using it over and over in order to make much, much more complicated drawings, and you're going to just love it. Today we're doing something super simple so that you can get used to the technique. So the first thing that we're going to do is to use your grid assist. You're going to lay that down in your sketchbook, hold it in place, and with your pencil, you're just going to trace it. This piece of paper I made specifically for you, and it is the exact same size as the opening in your viewfinder. So before you move it, the grids that are drawn on it are exactly like our viewfinder, and we are going to just give ourselves little tick mark extensions for all of those grids, so that now we can come back, and using the straight edge of the viewfinder, we can connect these tick marks, and we are essentially creating a grid on our paper that is exactly the same size and shape as the grid in our viewfinder. Now, the nice thing about this is that it's going to break down our drawing so that, or our original image, suddenly it's broken up into smaller shapes, and it's going to help us get perfect proportions. We can put the grid assist away, and I'm going to put down my drawing over here, and I'm going to put my grid on top of it, and I'm going to see if I can zoom in. So, all right, now the grid squares don't have, let's go ahead and tape it down just so it doesn't move around. 2 tiny little pieces of tape, don't use any more than you need. Position the viewfinder so that it's over your original, and then just tape the top and bottom. We're going to be taking this tape off, so don't go crazy with the tape. So we're going to go ahead and number, even though these squares on our viewfinder don't have numbers on them, we are going to pretend like this is number 1. So we'll put box 1, box 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now this will help you know when I'm talking about, box number 3, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, this box, and the shape of my milk glass that is in box number 3. So we're just going to start with the upper left corner, and we are going to create our glass and the milk inside of it and our kawaii face. We are going to make those based on the grid so that our drawing looks exactly like the original. So if I look at grid square number 1, my grid, my viewfinder is actually broken down. It has these extra little tick marks. These little tick marks show halfway across each square. So that's kind of good to keep in mind. Each of these boxes, in fact, I could go ahead and let's break up all of our squares halfway, half, half, half. So I'm just making these little tick marks that are halfway along the bottom of the 9 square, halfway along the bottom of the 12 square, halfway along the bottom of the 11, the 10, and so forth, halfway down the side of each of these. And if you eyeball it, close is close enough. Okay, now our grid is exactly like the viewfinder. So the first thing that we're going to do is to figure out where the profile line, which is the outside line of our object, where it crosses the grids. So the top of the milk glass crosses about halfway between the top and the halfway tick mark of our number 1 box. So if we come down halfway between the top and the tick mark, that's where the milk glass comes across the grid, and it goes straight across, and it intersects the grid that goes into the 3 box. And then let's see, it turns and it comes down, and it comes down exactly halfway, but in the 3 box between the bottom left-hand corner and the tick mark, which is right here. So we can draw that. And it comes straight down through the 6 box, through the 9 box, and then almost all the way through the 12, but not exactly. Let's see, it comes down through the 12 box, and it turns, and it crosses the 12 grid line, not quite at the bottom, but halfway between the bottom and the tick mark. So halfway between the bottom and the tick mark. Okay, and then let's see, the profile line comes across the 11. So we're going to put that in. And then in the 10, it comes across for a ways, and then it turns up and it crosses the grid just to the right of the tick mark in that 10 box. So just to the right of the tick mark. And then it comes up through the 7 and the 4. So I'm going to come up through the 7 and the 4. And it comes up until it meets my very original line, where I started. Now this is great because this rectangle, which is the outside of the glass, is exactly the same size and proportion as our original. That's what we're shooting for. Now let's go ahead and make this rectangle in here, which is supposed to look like milk. And then we'll come back and do the face. So again, we're going to start in the upper left box, the box that's called number 1. And we're going to see where this corner is. Actually, don't worry about the corner. Let's see where it crosses the grid line. So it crosses the grid line. This is the bottom right-hand corner of the number 1 box. And here's the tick. It's someplace in between, but a little bit closer to the bottom of the box. So this is my corner. This is my tick mark. It's a little bit closer to that bottom corner. All right, now it comes all the way through the 2 square grid. And then let's see, it comes over here, and someplace over here it turns down and it crosses the grid line. Let's see where it crosses the grid line. In the 3 square grid, it crosses, this is the corner, and this is the tick mark. It's not quite halfway. It's a little bit closer to the corner, so not quite halfway, closer to the corner. Okay, there we go. And now it comes down through the 6 and down through the 9 and partway down through the 12. Down through the 6, down through the 9, partway down through the 12. Now it comes down to the 12, and let's see where it crosses the outside of my milk line, crosses the 12 grid, just below the tick mark. So just below the tick mark comes over here. For me, it's always helpful to work off of the grid to see where my profile line or my shape line crosses the grid. All right, now it comes over, all the way over through the 11 box. Now I'm in the 10 box, comes through the 10. I don't know how far. Maybe I'll come up here and see where it turns up. That milk line turns up, starts to go up and crosses this grid. Oh my gosh, it's not at the corner, it's not at the tick, it is exactly halfway in between. So let's see, not at the corner, not at the tick, exactly halfway in between. And now I can extend that line and connect. The milk line comes up through the 7, up through the 4, and then partway up through the 1. And I can extend my original line over. Now I have 2 rectangles. One that is the outside rectangle of the glass, one that is the milk, and now we'll do the face. So the face, it looks like, excuse me, looks like his little mouth is not crossing any grid line. So I'm going to wait and come back to that. It looks like this eye and this eye, the drawing is symmetrical, but it's off of my grid. That's okay, trust the grid. Let's look at this eye first. The bottom of the eye crosses almost at the intersection between the 8, 9, 11, and 12. So here's the 8, 9, 11, 12. Here's the intersection. That eye actually comes just below that intersection. It comes up above the bottom of the 8 box, and then it turns back and just crosses this grid line. Something like that. All right, this one over here, again, we're going to look at where it crosses the grid line. Let's start at the top. This one crosses the grid line just above the bottom left corner of the 8. So here's the bottom left corner of the 8. Come up just a little bit and something like that. And then it crosses right at the intersection of the 7, 8, 10, 11, right at the intersection. Awesome. Now we can make this little funny cat mouth. And when you can't relate your shape or your line to a grid line because it doesn't cross, it floats, you have to relate it to an object that you've already drawn. So we've already drawn his eyes, and there are his eyes. His mouth is exactly in between and just a little lower than the eyes. So exactly in between and just a little lower than the eyes. We're going to start in the middle and do this kind of like a wide W shape. Now we can put the little circles in for his cheeks. We can see how this circle crosses over the 11, 12 grid line. And this one crosses over the 10, 11 grid line. Well done. All right. Now let's get out your pens and go over those lines. I like to use these pens, come in small, medium, and large. They're called calligraphy, or rather craft and beyond calligraphy pens, because they have a brush tip. So you have small, medium, and large. I think I'm going to be using the medium and the small for this milk. I'm going to start with my profile lines using the medium. I love these pens because they have a soft brush tip. In order to keep that as nice as possible, what you'll want to do is to, first of all, practice. So take your medium pen and go ahead and drag toward you by pressing pretty hard. Now go sideways. Now do some zigzags. And start with very light pressure and then heavier pressure. Isn't that neat? Now, if you do light pressure, heavy pressure, light, light, heavy, light. And if you go heavy, light, heavy, heavy, light, heavy, you can get all kinds of neat lines using this calligraphy brush pen. So I'm going to be using the medium pen on the outside, and I'm going to push down, lift up a little bit, and then push down, lift up a little bit, and push down, lift up, push down, lift up, push down. It just exaggerates the thickness of the lines at the corners. You can find your own style. Now I'm going to use the medium again. And I'm going to have less pressure. So I'm just going to make the milk inside less pressure. And I'm not really doing any pushing down. Same amount of pressure for the whole thing. You can do kind of what you want. Now for the eyes, I'm going to do quite a bit of pressure, and I'm doing one of these side lines. So I'm turning my pen to the side and giving him kind of thick eyes. his little mouth. And then for his little cheeks, I'm going to switch to my small and just do it kind of light. When you use thin and thick pens for your drawings, it's called using different line weights. I know when I say weights, you think of like muscles and something that's heavy. Well, visually heavy lines are called heavyweight, and visually light lines are lightweight. We can go ahead and erase our grid. Hopefully you made your grid nice and light so that it's easy to erase. And there's your drawing. It is an exact replica of your original. If you would like to, you can use your colored pencils and you can color your little milk glass. Great job, guys!